Welcome to the Petey Performance Podcast, a short solo episode of the podcast for you guys today. To be honest, I wasn't going to record. We have had some restructuring and we are starting with a new podcast editor, so I was putting it on the long finger. And I'm actually behind in terms of getting the podcast out. So I was going to just wait because I have 2 in-person recordings tomorrow for the next couple of weeks, and I was going to put them out. But I'm going to practice what I preach here, and I'm going to be consistent. No matter if it's a little bit late, no matter if it's on time, it's going out, even if it is short, if it is long. And we shall see if people see value in what I'm putting out. But something that I have been thinking about over the last couple of days is what I'm going to talk about today. And it is about working with athletes, and the athletes need to take the first step. Coaching is a 2-way process, but there's no point attempting to coach somebody that isn't really ready to be coached yet. So this actually came to mind when I saw, I think it was David Gray online, but I can't be sure or can't be certain, talking about working with professional athletes. And somebody asked him if he thought it was a good idea to reach out to pro athletes or elite athletes to work with them. And Dave, being as wise as he is, said the number one way to get somebody to not want to work with you is to tell them that they should work with you. And he's 100% correct in that regard. I've navigated this in the past as well. And it's hard when you don't have the credibility initially to attract clients. And I've actually heard a lot of people talking recently about cold reach outs and how cold reach outs is sleazy and it's never going to work. And it's not the right way about going and getting clients or acquiring customers, but it's just a strategy. It's a strategy for acquiring customers. And sometimes those cold reach outs, they don't need to be ice cold as well. If the person is already following you or liking some of your stuff, then it's perfectly fine to reach out to them, have a conversation and see if they're interested in working with you. But number one, if they like your content, you could see what other content they are interested in viewing. And that can lead to better content, which is going to be better for your audience and better for growth. Or it could lead to that person having a conversation, then signing up to work with you initially. But you've got to be willing to take that first step. You've got to be willing to put yourself out there and send a message. It's the same thing as dating. Like, you got to shoot your shot. Like, if you don't put it out there, you can't expect that you're ever going to go on a date with that person, because they're not going to see you. They're not going to know you're interested. And even if it's just a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like even if it's just a little message, and it's just the conversation happens and nothing comes of it, or you're not even interested in each other and you don't like each other's personality, then there's nothing ventured, nothing gained. And it's the same thing in coaching. If you don't match up and they're not interested in what you have to offer and they're not a good fit for your system or your process, then it's not going to work. They're better off going with somebody else. But at least you've put yourself out there and you've had that conversation and you've realized maybe that that's not the archetype or the avatar that is appropriate for me to work with. It's not the person that would fit the best into my system. It's not the type of person that I have the best success with in terms of helping them towards their performance goals. And you do figure out that you work well with some people and you don't work well with other people, and that's perfectly fine. But I think you've got to be willing to work with a wide variety of people first initially when you get into the industry. Similarly to when you're training, you've got to be general initially, to then down the line figuring out, okay, this is what I do best. This is who I work with best. And these are the people that I can really provide the most value to. And that's when you niche down. And it's the same thing in regards to performance, I guess, on the pitch. It's like, I work on all of these different general qualities, but when I get to the pitch, I know that my speed is what's going to be the difference between me winning or losing. Now, I'm still good enough at all of the other things that I can get away with it. I can compete with other people, but I know my one true superpower is my speed. So I'm going to use that in most scenarios. So you've got to develop a well-rounded athlete. You've got to develop as a well-rounded coach, and you've got to develop a well-rounded business in order to continue to grow and continue to go forward. But in relation to working with athletes, I've had a number of relatively high profile athletes having conversations with me in the last month or two. And I've started working with a couple of them as well. And those athletes reached out to me, and they were the ones that initiated that process, and they have bought into that process, and they're getting good dividends out of that process because they're investing their energy into executing what I am programming and what I am advising they do. And as a result of them reaching out, them committing to the program and the training, their buy-in is going to be greater. Their buy-in to the program is going to be greater. And as a result, they're probably going to be more consistent with it. Now, had I reached out to those athletes and, I don't know, said to them, look, I will train you for free, and they said yes on the off chance, they probably wouldn't do the program. They probably wouldn't buy into the program. They probably wouldn't believe in the program. It probably would lead to no improvements in performance as a result of those factors. And it's the same thing with athletes that I work with in club level or with the teams that I work with. I've had a number of athletes who I have been insistent should be reaching out to me to work in a one-on-one basis in their extras pre-training, but I never am going to force them to come to training, pre-training, to get those extras in. They've got to be the one that says to me, look, I think I need to work on this. Can you help me do that? And I'm always receptive to the athletes that say that to me. And I always do my best to facilitate their development and get there early and give them that little bit of extra care that they need and the extra service that they need to take them to the next level. Because for them, a matter of fact, like they're not going to be getting a fully individualized approach in a team session. Some athletes need a little bit more individualization. Sometimes they need a little bit more cueing. Sometimes they're not able to pick up on the cues that you're giving in the team session. Sometimes they need a different cue. Sometimes they move slightly differently to others in the group, or the way that the general group moves. And as a result, one cue for the rest of the group is not applicable to them. And in the last week or so, I've been working with athletes in a one-on-one basis who are returning to play or rehabbing, and it's just hilarious that like some of the cues that I use when they're in the team scenario that I don't see them employing and don't see them listening to, I'm using the exact same cues in a one-on-one scenario with them pre-training or on the side of training as they return to play, and they're actually understanding what it is I want. And then when they do it, they're like, that felt different to anything I've ever felt before. That felt way better. I feel way faster. I feel more efficient. I feel less in pain. I feel more fluid. And that's as a result of just taking the time away to work with them in a one-on-one setting, but with them having sought me out to work with me and sought out my advice. It's not me being overbearing and saying, look, you should be doing this and you need to get up there early and you need to do this. But it's me being open to wanting to help them and being open to them coming to work with me when they're ready to work with me. And that's the only way it works. It doesn't work in the other way where I'm ready to take them to their next level, but they're not ready to get to that level yet, or they're not ready to commit to getting to that level yet. It goes back to the old adage that you can only help people that want to be helped. So my advice in this regard to coaches is to put as much into the athletes and the players and the clients that you are working with and give them the most that they can pay attention to, can understand, and the best quality of service for them and for that individual that's going to take them to the next level. And it doesn't go unnoticed. Other people see what you're doing with them. People talk. Positive word of mouth is a really important thing. And as everybody says, if you're working with somebody in a individualized one-on-one basis, giving them a few extras, and that person starts performing really, really well and looking like they're playing very well, moving very well, and they're very, very confident, other people are going to stand up and say, "Ooh, what are they doing over there that's taking him to the next level? Maybe I should be trying to do some of that. And then once they come over and they commit to change and they commit to implementing something new, and you figure out what it is their issue is, and you figure out what the lowest hanging fruit is in terms of taking them to the next level in terms of their performance, then you implement that, you guide them towards making that a habit. You guide them towards improving how they're moving, improving their habits away from how they're moving, improving their psychology towards their performance, their psychology towards speed, their psychology towards their lifestyle, towards being an athlete. And then over time, they will hopefully develop, and you will put the highest quality of service and value into working with them that you do with everyone else. And then that has a cascading effect of other people seeing them improve and them seeing value in what you're doing. And then again, the cycle repeats itself. And that is how you create a good coaching business, is through providing as much value as you possibly can. And I know it's what I talked about last week. But at the same time, you've got to go through that phase where not that many people want to work with you. And it's okay. Now you can deal with that in two different ways. You can either attempt to reach out and work with a number of different people and try to get lots of people into your service and do the best job that you possibly can with those people. And I think like that is akin to the person on the field playing who doesn't wait for the game to pass them by, that goes and grabs it by the scruff of the neck, and like they try their hardest to wrestle back momentum and to get themselves on top. Sometimes to their detriment, they can, as I've been told when I was playing, try too hard and not let it happen. And that's that side of it. But then I would prefer to be on that side of it than go towards the other side of it, where you can just be a bit passive and just kind of wait for it to happen for you. And it will happen for you if you continue doing good things. And I think that's the kind of athlete that probably doesn't go around running like a headless chicken or running around chasing every ball to the end line and play with like real tenacity and trying to be a real aggressive player. They probably just, look, it's not happening right now, but it will happen. And they probably just do the simple things really well until it does happen. And maybe they're right. And maybe that's the right way of dealing with it as a coach and a practitioner as well, is just do the simple things well with the athletes and the clients you're working with, and then good people will find you. But I think hopefully you can accelerate how fast you can get there by pushing a little bit more. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend reaching out to these athletes and saying you should work with me if they have no interest in working with you whatsoever. But I would recommend being open to having conversations, and I would recommend having conversations with multiple people, because the more conversations you have, the more people you can connect with, the more people that you then have a possibility of helping down the line, and the more possibility it is that somebody's going to work with you. If you don't have the conversation with that person and you don't listen to their issues and you don't attempt to help them, I guess, then they're probably unlikely to, well, they're not unlikely, but they're less likely to work with you. So I think have an openness to talking to people, to having conversations, to reaching out to people, listening to their issues, and then seeing if you could potentially help them. But don't attach yourself to the fact that they have to absolutely work with you. If they don't want to work with you, they don't want to work with you, and it's perfectly fine. They probably wouldn't be a right fit for working with you anyway. And when you accept that fact, it becomes a lot easier to accept what other people would term rejection. But in your mind, it's no longer rejection. It's not rejection anymore. It's just a conversation. It's just connecting with somebody. And it's just one person ticked off the list for now that's probably not going to work with you or not ready to work with you yet. But just because they're not ready to work with you yet doesn't mean that they're never going to be ready to work with you. And that's the perception that I choose to take on these things. And it's just something that's been useful for me. So maybe it'll be useful for other people. And that's the short episode for today. So 2 very, very good guests coming up. I'm going down to the Premier County tomorrow to interview the two of them. So keep your ear to the ground and your eyes peeled for those. If you've liked this podcast and you think somebody else would like it, please remember to like it, share it, and send it.